So Adam opened the floodgate of sin and death around the world to every tribe, to every tongue, to every people, to every nation, to every continent. And you want to know what's wrong with the world? You want to know what's wrong with mankind? The answer is original sin. But this leads us now to the second major doctrine, and it is the doctrine of total depravity. And so I want you, while you're in Romans, turn back to chapter 3. Romans chapter 3 and verse 9, because not only was Adam's sin imputed, credited to every person of the human race, but the sin nature of Adam has been transmitted to us in the moment of conception. The sin nature of Adam has been passed down from parent to child, and you inherited that sin nature. So beginning in verse 9, Paul will give really what is the quintessential signature text on total depravity. And just by way of introduction, before we work our way through these verses, total depravity means that the totality of human nature has been corrupted, poisoned, and polluted by sin. From the top of your head to the bottom of your feet, every inch and every ounce of every person born into this world has had sin like a fatal poison flooding through their soul. The mind of every person has been darkened so they cannot see or understand the truth. The heart of every person has been defiled so that they do not love the truth. They love what they should hate, and they hate what they should love. And the will of every person is dead and in bondage to sin and cannot believe the gospel in and of themselves. And so beginning in verse 9, it's an incredible scene. And let me just set this up, because the scene is a courtroom scene. And the entire human race is standing trial before God. And God is judge and jury and prosecutor. And Paul is like a courtroom reporter, and the defendants are the entire human race. And unconverted mankind is without an advocate. And the evidence is submitted. And the evidence is found in God's Scripture, the Old Testament. And the verdict is indisputable. It is the condemnation of the entire human race, and there will be no defense offered by mankind. And there is no appeal to a higher court. So beginning in verse 9, here is the charge. Paul begins in verse 9, what then? In other words, he is saying, what more can I say? Because this section began in chapter 1, verse 18, when he writes, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. And throughout the rest of chapter 1, chapter 2, now coming into chapter 3, verse 9, he says, what more can I say? He has built an indisputable case of the condemnation of every man and every woman under the wrath of God. So he says, what then? Are we better than they? And the we refer to Paul and the believers who were in Rome, and the they refer to those who are yet outside of Christ. Are we of better stock? Did we have a better nature? Were we more spiritual than they? And he says, not at all. Unequivocally, no. For we have already charged, and that's a legal term of an indictment of a crime and to be found guilty. For we have already charged that both Jews and Greeks, that covers the entire human race, are under sin. All mankind is under the penalty of sin. All mankind is under the power of sin and the pollution of sin. All mankind is enslaved and dominated by sin.